Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the 1995 Fleer football release. So, there are a few card sets as infamous as 1995 Fleer, and part of the problem is that it's across the board. Because if you put together a list of which Fleer cards are considered the worst, normally 1991 Fleer baseball is put up at the top of the list, with 91 Fleer football not far off. But 95 Fleer is right in there. And the reason for that is because it is a very unique set. It's a very haphazard set that's really kind of the product of Fleer's evolution and their need to figure out just who they were going to be in the 1990s. In 1990, when they launched in football, they wanted to make a card design that was nice and very, very well crafted. But what the card lacked was, well, character. Because they ran into the buzzsaw of Score and Pro Set that were just running roughshod, launching the 1990s, just really catapulting the entire industry. So in 1991, Fleer responded by making one of the boldest cards and not one of the most endearing cards in their football release, which went so far on the opposite side that in 1992 they just scaled it back and just made a simple card. Hardly anything to it. Just a little bit of a design flourish on it, but just make a good card. And it worked perfectly fine. So in 1993, now they wanted to kind of refine it by simplifying it. And the simplified design was one with a silver border and almost nothing else. And it looked just nice enough that while it didn't stand out in the display case, at least the card had some character and some class. Not a lot, but some. In 1994, they continued that trend by making a more refined and delicate card, but the card ended up being a little bit more lost design-wise than the previous year. So they needed to transition, but they didn't know where that was going to be. However, in 1994, they came up with an idea that, well, kind of inspired them. Because the 1994 Fleer release saw the first time that they had an insert card in every single pack. And this wasn't like 1990 Pro Set where they had Super Bowl art in every pack, or the Topps 1,000-Yard Club cards, which was also a card in every pack where it was a single set and easy to put together. Fleer wanted to have more challenging sets, so they created a whole bunch of insert sets, whether there was like 5 or 6 or however many, to distribute it out. Because if you have one set with 10 cards, another set with 10 cards, another set with 10 cards, a card set with, say, 15 cards, and then a hard set with 8 cards, well, already you've got 45 main cards, and then you've got an additional challenging card, which for a 36 count box ain't going to cut it. Which meant that, especially when you add in doubles, it was going to take 2 or 3 boxes to get all of these insert sets. So that meant that collectors were hungry and they were going to pour through more packs to collect these basic insert sets that really weren't all that special. But in doing that, they ran into a problem, which is that you got to come up with a bunch of insert designs. And so there's kind of a haphazard quality to it where some designs are really cool and some are just kind of cranked out. But that whole idea inspired them to come up with a version of this for their main sets. So in 1995, or really right at the end of 1994 in hockey, leading into 1995, they launched this card set where the 1995 design was built on breaking all the teams out into different divisions, and every conference has its own design. In the case of the NFL, there were 6 divisions, 3 in the AFC, 3 in the NFC, which meant they had the ability to come up with 6 different designs. For better or for worse, that's the way the card set was going to be. And in baseball, they at least laid the teams out in terms of each division. So that meant that you had all of the cards for one section were all the same design, even though it looked different team by team, but they were the same design. And then you switch to another design and another design. Okay, at least there's consistency for there. For football, however, they started off with Arizona and they went all the way through Washington. So that means that you had the Arizona Cardinals as well as the Atlanta Falcons, and then you transition from the NFC over to the AFC for the Buffalo Bills, back to the NFC for the Chicago Bears, over to the AFC for Cincinnati. Basically, the whole card set was a big mess of designs going back and forth that made the whole thing a big jumbled mess. And that's unfortunate, but at the same time, dividing up NFL teams into conference is not something that we see very often. So it kind of goes both ways. Still, a very, very bold concept. All right. So the first design we're going to look at is the AFC East. And this is a card that is, I'd be surprised if anybody didn't consider this to be the most difficult card design to look at. They took the same image of the player and blew it up for the background and then used a color, not quite a color inversion, but a color distortion to add some contrast to it. Well, that's definitely a success. They do have gold foil on it, which is an interesting contrast, which I think does actually work as a complement to it. But needless to say, this entire subset with these weird, awkward colors is definitely quite a bit. But I want to take a moment and look at the card back, which is a stipple design with team colors in a very cleanly laid out design. All cards use the exact same design. They have different colors because of the different teams, but otherwise, that consistency allows you to put the set together, which, thank you, I'm really glad they did that. All right, so here we have the AFC East. Now for the AFC Central, this design is more of a print design. It's the kind of thing you see in magazines where they have text here and text there in team color, which is a nice feature of the card. Otherwise, it's just an image of the player. So it's a card that is relying on the print design concept to really carry it. And it does make a very nice, clean design, even though it's not quite as exciting as, well, thankfully it's not as exciting as the East. The last AFC conference is the West, and here they went with a very simplistic approach where the whole background is changed to one team color and it's given a stipple art treatment. That's it. They do have some floating text with the silver foil that was on almost all of the conferences, which adds to the cleanliness of how this card looks. So there you go. Those are the three AFC designs. Now over in the NFC East card is, there's a lot going on here because the background is kind of blurred with not a physical texture, but a visual texture of the background to allow the player to stand out, even though he actually kind of gets blended into the background a little bit more. But still, it does look nice, as long as you don't look at the bottom. The bottom, unfortunately, uses a very stark color distortion to, I don't know why it's down there, but it's the kind of thing you're probably not going to see unless somebody on YouTube tells you to look at it, and then it's pretty difficult to miss. But that's the way that the NFC East designs were all done. For the NFC Central, this design is another very simplistic design where they just have some brushstroke effects on the upper portion of the card and otherwise leave the card alone. And the brushstroke effects create a very strong and dynamic quality to this card that makes it stand out within the set, maybe not so much in a display case. Still, it's a nice approach to the card, and this is the other card that uses gold foil as opposed to silver foil. So only two of the design themes have gold foil. The NFC West is the last conference, and here they broke the background into two, and on one side they repeated the image, but all in one monochromatic color with striations, vertical striations, breaking up the image and giving a texture to it, visual texture again. But note that the team color is not used for that whole half of the card. It's a different color, which adds an interesting quality to it that's not the kind of thing that you normally see on a card. But here we go. This is the set. These 6 designs are the way that the 1995 Fleer design was approached. There are no subsets, and the checklists are nothing to write home about, so this is the whole thing that carries the set. But before I go on to the insert sets, I do want to note about one card that you may run into, which is that in the mid-90s the NFL Properties group decided to do promo releases for, among other things, back to school. And so they gave the opportunity for every card company to do a promo card related to it. These cards are very common, and for Fleer, they chose to go with Michael Irvin. Now, the card for Michael Irvin should normally have silver foil on it, but this is a promo card, so there was no reason for them to do it, so instead it has silver print. But the way you can tell is on the card back, aside from not having a number, they also have a big plaque that says back to school. So it's a card that is very easy to tell the difference, but I just wanted for you to be aware that these cards are out here. All right, so for the inserts, the first insert set is actually a pretty interesting one because it is a Fleer preview set. So in 1993, Fleer was launched in baseball, only in baseball, and then in 1994 expanded out to basketball and to hockey. But in football, we didn't get a Fleer set because we had too much going on. Instead, the 1994 Fleer Ultra Series 2 cards, the inserts in those packs were Fleer inserts. So that was the first experience that we in football got to the Fleer release. And then in 1995, they did a whole card set. But in order to really kick it off, they wanted to let people know about it. So in Fleer proper, every single pack includes one insert card that is a Fleer preview card. There are 30 cards, one card for each team. So it is almost a box worth of cards, but it probably takes more than one box with some doubles. So the cards were very basic, or very common, but that was the whole point. It was supposed to show off another card set and get you inspired to collect those cards. That was the point. So with every single pack, they had two inserts. One was a standard Fleer preview. The other one was one of a number of different designs. And the first of those designs is Aerial Attack. This is a rare card, and it is completely brushed metal in the background, but very, very, very bright colors make this card really energetic, strong, and really cool looking. Love the way these cards look, and it's not a big set, but the cards, you do have to kind of work to put this card set together. So if there's one card that is going to be a carrot, this is certainly the one to do it. Almost all the other insert sets are common because they're those pack filler insert sets. And the next one in line is Gridiron Leaders. Now this is a card that has a really cool effect to it where the background is almost like a skyscraper. Not quite, but almost. And the vertical spandrels are glossy versus matte for the rest of the card, which makes it almost look like it has a little bit of relief. It's a really cool trait to this card. It makes the card look cooler than it normally would. But one thing I've got to note about this set is that all of the cards have a different orientation from the vertical front to the horizontal back. The first three cards in the set can be found with that orientation, but they can also be found with the orientation in reverse. So cards 1, 2, and 3, there are two versions of every one of the cards, and then cards 4 through 10, there's only one version of them. And they're pretty common, so it's an interesting quirk to these cards. The next insert set is called NFL Prospects. So with Fleer, after 1992, they wanted to be first on market with rookie cards. So the approach they took was they didn't even bother to design rookies into their set. Instead, they created a separate insert set that could be fully laid out and then printed and inserted right at the end into packs in order to get first on shelf timing for their release. Because the cards are so late or so early in the run, you're lucky if the cards even mention what team the player's on. But the big thing is the images are all of college players, which means these cards don't really look like they should be in an NFL pack. A little misleading in that regard, but these cards have a cool texturing to it where the background is actually almost like a non-gritty sandpaper. It has that feel to it that is a very interesting effect, making these cards a sneaky, good card design, even if the images just don't quite carry the way that we are used to them carrying. The next insert set is Provision, which is a carryover from, well, frankly, 1991. Provision started off as inserts and then became subsets in 92 and 93, and now by 1995 we were back to insert sets. And the artwork for these cards is a little bit more sophisticated than we're used to seeing on Provision cards. They look really nice. Although I do want to make a note that on the Marshall Faulk card, I'm nervous about the IndyCar driver because he's heading straight into a big slick of burning oil. I would advise slowing down and going around because I don't really know what this author was thinking. Oh well, it doesn't matter to me. We are moving on to the other difficult to get card set, which is Rookie Sensations. These cards were released in was jumbo packs. They were released in a different packs than the aerial attacks, and the cards have a cool quality to them because they look at the previous year's rookies. They have a very clean, nice looking design, but they also have relief to them. They are embossed, so that means on the front they pop out like an action pack card, and then correspondingly on the back there's the indentation to correspond with how the card extrudes out. And then the last insert set is the one that kind of made up for all the design inspiration, where you have TD Sensations, which is almost not designed at all. Again, when you're collecting cards out of packs in the quantity like this, it's not so much about how the cards look as much as making sure they're interesting enough designs to want to pursue, and TD Sensations was kind of at the bottom of that. But still, that was all of the cards that were released in packs. There are two other things to talk about, however. In 1993, Fleer took over the tradition of making fact cards, which were cards that were released in schools as part of the curriculum. The idea was you take the main front of the card and the back, but then you replace the statistics talking about the player specifically and his statistics for his career. And instead you replace that with like a quiz, allowing the cards to become a fun part of the educational process. So in 1995, Fleer once again was making these cards. It's a partial set, so they only took some of the players, and with the cards in this set, they are done exactly the same way, except there's no foil. So any gold foil card is replaced with gold print. Any silver foil card is replaced with silver print where the foil would be. Otherwise, they're pretty much the same. Oh yeah, except for the Shell logo on the back, because Shell had taken over the sponsorship for Fact, and so for the Fleer cards, that's what we got to see on the cards. But that does prompt me to talk about one other thing, which is that Fleer teamed up with Shell to do a special giveaway at Shell where they had game cards. And the way that it worked was you had a normal card with perforations at the bottom, which attaches to a contest card. So each one of these cards looks at Super Bowl championship game. It looks at really important games in NFL history. It's a small set, so you get to see some cool old photos is kind of a big part of it. But like I said, it was attached to a contest card where you could compete to win prizes through Shell. So the cards are more likely to be broken off on at the middle of the card, but oftentimes you can find these cards intact with both sides contained together. They don't fit as well into card sheets, but still, they are pretty cool. And that finally brings 1995 Fleer to a close. It's interesting there's so much to talk about, but it is a card set that really pushed boundaries. And while 1996 would be a set where they would kind of start to pull everything back in line, it wouldn't be until 1997 that we would see Fleer finally figure out what the Fleer flagship set, what that was going to be in the future. Still, 1995 was an interesting experiment that hopefully it taught them a lot of don'ts as opposed to a lot of do's. Still, regardless, it is a lot of fun to go through all this. So, thank you very much for watching. Now, I've already done everything for Fleer leading up to this. I'm going to be doing Fleer 96 and 97 at a later date, so I'll get around to that. But otherwise, this was the conclusion of this. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do so. And thank you very much for watching.